My daughter kicked me out of her graduation, so I took the stage and exposed everything on the mic. Margaret Wilson clutched her worn leather purse tightly as she walked toward the grand auditorium at the University of Michigan. After 25 years of raising her daughter alone, the most anticipated day of her life had finally arrived. That's when she saw Ashley running toward her, face flushed with nerves and eyes brimming with tears. The young woman intercepted her mother in the parking lot, far from the other guests happily heading toward the graduation ceremony. "Mom, you need to leave, now," Ashley said, breathless. Margaret stopped abruptly, confused. She'd woken up at 5 in the morning to fix her hair, put on the only dressy outfit she owned, and taken a 3-hour bus ride from Dearborn to Detroit. "What do you mean, honey? I came for your graduation. I've waited years for this day." "I know, Mom, but something happened. You can't stay." "Ashley, what's going on? I've been here 5 minutes and you're already sending me away." Her daughter glanced around as if checking if anyone was watching. Other families passed by, laughing and taking pictures, carrying bouquets and celebratory signs. "It's complicated to explain. Please, just go. I'll tell you later." Margaret felt a tightness in her chest. She remembered all the nights working as a hospital janitor, the mornings waking before sunrise to clean the bakery, and the afternoons sewing clothes for neighbors, all to pay for her daughter's education. "Ashley, I worked my whole life for this moment. I even sold my wedding ring to buy your first textbooks. I'm not leaving." "Mom, you're embarrassing me. Please." The words hit Margaret like a punch to the gut. She studied her daughter closely and noticed something different. Ashley wore an expensive pantsuit, designer shoes, and a purse worth more than Margaret's monthly salary. "Where did you get the money for these clothes?" "That doesn't matter right now. What matters is you need to leave." "Ashley, I'm your mother. I have every right to be at your graduation." "No, you don't," the young woman shouted, making a few people turn to look. "If you don't leave, I'll call security." Margaret was stunned. The daughter she'd raised with so much love and sacrifice was threatening to call security on her at her own graduation. "Are you serious?" "I am." "Go, Mom. I don't want you here." Margaret's heart shattered. She looked around and saw other mothers hugging their children, taking pictures, crying with emotion. She felt completely lost and humiliated. "Fine," she murmured, trying to keep her dignity. "But I want you to know, this is hurting me deeply." "I know, Mom, but it's better this way." Margaret walked away slowly, legs trembling. Something was very wrong, but she couldn't understand what. She headed toward the bus stop, but something made her pause. Through the auditorium's glass windows, she spotted a man in the front row that made her blood run cold. Richard Parker, Ashley's father. The man who had abandoned her when she was 7 months pregnant and vanished without a trace. He was there, well-dressed, chatting animatedly with other guests like a proud, present father. Margaret hid behind a pillar and kept watching. Richard wore an expensive suit and carried a bouquet of red roses. "This can't be," she whispered to herself. She decided not to leave. She needed to understand what was happening. Finding a side entrance, she slipped into the auditorium unseen and sat in the back row, partially hidden behind a large family. The ceremony began, and Margaret watched with a mix of pride and anguish. Ashley looked beautiful in her black cap and gown, but there, in the front row, sat Richard. They were whispering, and at one point he even held her hand. How is this possible? Margaret wondered to herself. During the dean's speech, Margaret noticed a university employee whispering something in Richard's ear. He nodded positively and smiled. There was clearly something planned that she didn't know about. When it was time to call the graduates, Margaret paid full attention. She wanted to memorize every second of her daughter receiving her diploma, even if she couldn't officially be there. Ashley Wilson Parker, announced the dean. Margaret noticed they didn't mention her name as the parent, which was common at graduations. Normally they'd say, daughter of so-and-so. Her name had been completely omitted. Ashley walked up to the stage gracefully. But when the dean handed her the microphone to give a special thank you speech, Margaret's heart raced. "I'd like to thank the most important person in my life," Ashley began, looking directly at Richard. "The man who made it possible for me to be here today, my father, Richard Parker." Margaret felt the world spin. Ashley was calling Richard her father publicly in front of hundreds of people. He gave me a full scholarship when he found out I was his daughter. He funded my entire education and never asked for anything in return. He's the father life gave me when I needed it most. Applause filled the auditorium as Richard stood up and modestly waved, as if he truly were a devoted father. Margaret gripped the sides of her chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her daughter continued the speech, telling a completely distorted version of the story. She talked about how Richard had found her by chance and decided to help her, how he was a successful businessman who cared about educating underprivileged youth. Not once did Ashley mention Margaret. It was as if she didn't exist, as if all the struggle, all the sacrifice, all the tears had never happened. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. When the official ceremony ended, Margaret stayed hidden, watching people greet each other. She saw Richard talking to several local businessmen and politicians, clearly an influential figure. Ashley was always by his side, introducing him as her father. Margaret decided to go to the restroom to process everything she'd seen. She was washing her face when a young woman walked in crying. It was Jennifer, a classmate of Ashley's, whom Margaret knew from the rare times she'd visited the university. "Mrs. Wilson, you're here, I thought..." Jennifer stopped, looking confused. "Hi, Jennifer, I came for Ashley's graduation. But she said you weren't coming, that you couldn't afford to travel." Margaret felt another stab of pain. She said that. Jennifer realized she'd said something she shouldn't have. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have..." "No, it's fine. You can tell me." The young woman hesitated but was visibly upset. "It's just... something strange is going on with that man, Richard." "What do you mean?" Jennifer looked around to make sure they were alone. "He's been offering jobs to several girls in our class, invites them to dinner to discuss career opportunities, you know?" Margaret felt a chill. "And then?" "3 girls have told me he tried, that he wanted more than just professional talk. One of them cried so much she missed class for a week." "Are you sure about this?" "Yes. And the worst part is Ashley signed a contract with his company today. She's going to work directly with him starting next week." Margaret's blood ran cold. Her daughter was walking straight into a trap and didn't even suspect it. "Jennifer, have you told anyone in administration about this?" "I tried, but no one believes me. He donated a lot of money to the university. He's seen as a benefactor. When we complain, they say we're jealous or making up stories." Margaret understood the situation immediately. Richard had returned not out of paternal love, but because Ashley was now a promising professional he could exploit. And worse, she had completely fallen for his manipulation. "Jennifer, where is he now?" "I think in the event hall. There's a reception for graduates and VIP guests." Margaret thanked her and left the bathroom, determined. She needed to warn Ashley about the danger, even if her daughter would hate her for it. She headed to the event hall, where an elegant party was underway. She managed to get in because people were moving freely between rooms. The hall was decorated with flowers and golden balloons, with waiters serving champagne and a lavish spread of sweets and hors d'oeuvres. Margaret stayed on the periphery, watching. She saw Ashley chatting animatedly with Richard and other businessmen. Her daughter was laughing and seemed extremely happy. Richard kept a protective hand on her back, a gesture that looked paternal to outsiders, but Margaret knew that kind of touch. She waited for an opportunity, and when she saw Richard head to the bar alone, she followed. He was ordering whiskey when she approached. "Richard." He turned and for a moment seemed not to recognize her. Then his face twisted in disgust. "Margaret, what are you doing here?" "I came for our daughter's graduation. Remember her? The child you abandoned 25 years ago." Richard glanced around to see if anyone was listening. "Keep your voice down. And she's not a child anymore. She's a grown woman who can make her own decisions." "What decisions? You're manipulating her." "I'm offering opportunities, something you never could." The sharpness of his reply made Margaret furious, but she tried to stay calm. "Why did you come back, Richard? After all these years?" He took a sip of whiskey and smirked. "Because she's worth it now. Graduated with honors in business, speaks 3 languages, has potential. She could be useful to my company. Useful? She's your daughter. She's a talented professional who happens to share my DNA. Nothing more. Margaret couldn't believe his coldness. And when she finds out who you really are, she won't, because you won't tell her. You already tried to pull her away from me, and look how that turned out. She chose me. She didn't choose you. You manipulated her, made up that story about the scholarship. The scholarship was real. I paid for 3 years of her education. I have all the receipts. Margaret was confused. How did you even know she was studying here? Richard smiled cruelly. I have my connections. Found out 3 years ago that my daughter was at a state university. Poor but smart kid, exactly the kind of professional I need. You planned all this. Of course I did. I invested in her like any promising project. And now I'll reap the rewards. Margaret felt sick. She's not a project, she's a person, your daughter. She's my employee now. And one who'll be very grateful for everything I've done for her. You're disgusting. I'm practical, something you never were. Margaret remembered what Jennifer had said about the other young women. And the other students you harassed? Richard narrowed his eyes. Watch your words. I could sue you for defamation. So it's true. It's business. Some understood the rules, others didn't. Ashley will. I won't let you do this to her. You don't have a choice. She already signed the contract. She's working for me, whether you like it or not. Margaret realized she wouldn't convince him of anything. She decided to change her strategy and began fiddling with her phone as if distracted. In reality, she was activating the recorder. So you admit you only came back because she could be useful to you? Of course. I'm not a sentimental man, Margaret. I'm a businessman. I saw an opportunity and took it. And the whole speech about being the father she deserves? Richard laughed. Marketing. People love a redemption story. The remorseful father who comes back to care for his daughter works wonders for my public image. And you feel nothing for her? No remorse for abandoning her? Remorse is a waste of time. I didn't want to be a father at 25. I had bigger goals. Now I'm 49, successful, and can have a daughter who suits me. A daughter who suits you? A competent employee who also improves my reputation. Win-win, as they say in the US. Margaret was managing to record everything, but she needed him to speak specifically about his intentions with Ashley. And what exactly do you expect from her? Total dedication. Just like you dedicated yourself to raising her, she'll dedicate herself to working for me. With the difference that I'll pay her well for it. What if she wants to leave the company? She won't. I'll make her feel so grateful and dependent she'll never even consider it. It's a technique I use with all my most valuable employees. You're a sociopath. I'm a winner, and our daughter will learn a lot from me. At that moment, Margaret heard footsteps approaching and saw Ashley walking toward them. She quickly put her phone away, but Richard noticed the movement. What were you doing with your phone? Nothing, just checking the time. Ashley reached them with pure anger in her expression. Mom, what are you doing here? I told you to leave. Ashley, I need to talk to you about... No, you never stop embarrassing me. First, you show up after I asked you not to. Now you're stalking my father. He's not your father, Ashley. Not in the way you think. Of course he is. He helped me when you never could. Paid for my college, gave me opportunities, treats me with respect. Margaret looked at Richard, who watched the scene with satisfaction. Ashley, you need to hear the truth. The truth is, you've always been bitter, never able to accept your own failure. Now you want to ruin my happiness because you can't stand seeing me doing well. Ashley's words hurt more than any physical blow. Margaret tried to reach for her daughter, but she pulled away. Don't touch me. I'm tired of your bitterness, your whining, your constant victimhood. Ashley, You did nothing but raise me full of complexes and fears, living in a miserable house, always complaining about money, always sad. My father showed me life could be different. Margaret felt tears welling up. I did the best I could. Your best wasn't enough. It never was. And now I have someone who actually cares about me. Richard wrapped an arm around Ashley in a protective gesture. My dear, Maybe you should go get ready for the official photo. I'll handle this. You're right, Dad. Mom, leave. I don't want you in my life anymore. Ashley walked away, leaving Margaret alone with Richard. He waited until she was out of sight before speaking. See? She chose me. And this time it wasn't because I abandoned her. It's because you didn't raise a daughter who respects you. She's confused. You manipulated her. She's enlightened. For the first time in her life, she can see the difference between a successful person and a failure. Margaret tried to show him the phone with the recording, but Richard was faster and tried to grab it from her hands. Give me that. No! Margaret clutched the phone tightly. Margaret, give me that phone right now. The commotion drew the attention of nearby people. A waiter approached, asking if everything was all right, and Richard immediately changed his demeanor. Everything's fine. The lady here wasn't feeling well and I was helping her. Margaret realized no one would believe her over him. She was a poor woman against an influential businessman. She tucked her phone into her purse and stepped away. She decided to wait outside the hall, watching through the window. She saw Ashley chatting with several guests, always accompanied by Richard. He introduced her to important people, making sure to mention he was the father of the talented young woman. Margaret also noticed how often he touched Ashley. Nothing overtly inappropriate, but lingering touches on her back, hand, and arm, the kind of contact that establishes subtle dominance. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. A university employee passed by Margaret, and she decided to try a different approach. Excuse me, do you work in the academic office? Yes, I do. Can I help you? I'm Ashley Wilson Parker's mother. She graduated today. Oh yes, Mr. Richard's girl. What a beautiful story, isn't it? A father who reconnects with his daughter and decides to help her. Margaret realized Richard's version had spread throughout the university. Do you know the details of this story? Yes, I do. Mr. Richard came to us 3 years ago saying he'd discovered he had a daughter studying here. He wanted to help financially but anonymously at first. Anonymously? That's right. He paid her tuition through a scholarship he created himself, without her knowing it came from him. He only revealed himself at the end of her studies. Margaret began to understand Richard's strategy. He had built a massive emotional debt in Ashley without her even realizing it. And my name? Does it appear on any documents as her guardian? The employee hesitated. Well, Ashley herself asked to remove your name from the graduation records. She said you two weren't on good terms and that she only wanted her father present at the ceremony. Another stab to the heart. Ashley had actively erased Margaret from her own graduation. I see. Thank you. Margaret stepped away from the employee and kept watching through the window. She saw them setting up a smaller stage for official photos of the graduates with their families. Ashley and Richard were already posing for several pictures. That's when Margaret made a desperate decision. She couldn't let her daughter walk into a trap without trying to save her one last time, even if it cost their relationship forever. She waited for the right moment. When the official photographer asked Ashley to give a short thank you speech to the VIP guests, Margaret saw her chance. Ashley took the microphone and began talking about gratitude, opportunities, and the wonderful father life had given her. The audience of special guests applauded, moved. Margaret entered the hall through a side door. A few people gave her odd looks, but she walked determinedly toward the small stage. And I want to tell everyone here that, thanks to my father, I've finally found my place in the world, Ashley said into the microphone. That's when Margaret stepped onto the stage. Ashley, she said loudly enough to be heard. Her daughter turned and saw her mother standing beside her on stage. Her expression shifted instantly from joy to anger. Mom, what are you doing? Get down from there. I need to talk to you, to all of you. A murmur spread through the crowd. Richard stood from his chair, visibly disturbed. Ashley, give me the microphone, Margaret said, holding out her hand. No way. Are you crazy? Get off that stage right now. Then I'll speak without it, Margaret said, raising her voice as much as she could. My name is Margaret Wilson. I'm Ashley Wilson Parker's mother. Some people began to pay attention, curious about the drama unfolding before them. Mum, stop it, you're embarrassing me. And I'm the one who raised this young woman alone for 25 years. Call security, shouted Richard, but there were no security guards nearby yet. Margaret continued, her voice growing firmer. I worked as a cleaner, a seamstress, a saleswoman. I woke up at 5 in the morning every single day. Mum, shut up. Ashley tried to pull Margaret off the stage, but she resisted. I sold my wedding ring to buy my daughter's first college textbooks. Some people in the crowd began to get emotional listening to her story. Others looked confused, trying to understand what was happening. Never, not once, did this young woman go without, Margaret went on, pointing at Ashley, because I sacrificed everything for her. Stop it, Ashley screamed, now crying. And the man she calls her father, Margaret said, pointing at Richard, is the same man who abandoned me when I was 7 months pregnant. A tense silence fell over the room. Everyone's eyes darted between Margaret, Ashley, and Richard. It's a lie, Ashley shouted. She's making this up because she's jealous. I'm not making it up, Margaret said, pulling her phone from her purse, and I can prove it. Richard tried to move toward the stage, but a few people blocked his path, eager to hear the recording. Margaret turned up the volume to the max. Richard's voice echoed through the room. Of course I planned it. I invested in her like I would any promising project. And now I'm going to reap the rewards. She's not a project, she's a person. She's your daughter. She's my employee now, and one who'll be very grateful for everything I've done for her. The silence that followed was deafening. Ashley stood frozen, staring at the phone as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. No, she whispered. Margaret let the recording continue. Regret is a waste of time. I didn't want to be a father at 25. I had bigger goals. Now I'm 49, successful, and I can have a daughter who suits me. Ashley collapsed to her knees on the stage, her hands covering her face. Her sobs filled the room. Richard tried to defend himself. That was taken out of context. She's lying. But the recording kept playing. A competent employee who also improves my reputation. Win-win, as the Americans say. At that moment, Jennifer stood up from the audience. He's lying, she shouted. He harassed several girls in our class. Other young women began standing up too, finding the courage to speak. It's true, one said. He invited me to dinner and tried to force me to... Me too, another confirmed. Richard was visibly panicking now. They're all liars, they're making this up. But the damage was done. The guests started murmuring among themselves, some visibly distancing themselves from Richard. Margaret knelt beside Ashley on the stage. My daughter, why didn't you tell me? Ashley sobbed. Why didn't you ever say what he was really like? Because you were a child. Because I thought it was better for you to grow up without hate. Because I hoped he would change. I was so cruel to you. You were confused. He manipulated you so well. Ashley lifted her face to look at her mother. Her eyes were red and swollen. I signed a contract with him. I have to work for him now. Margaret helped her daughter stand. No, you don't. But I signed it. Margaret picked up the microphone that had fallen to the floor. Is there a lawyer here? A middle-aged man stood up. I'm an attorney. Does a contract signed under fraud and manipulation hold up? No, it can easily be voided, especially with the evidence you have. Ashley pulled a folded paper from her purse, the contract she had signed with such pride just hours before. With decisive movements, she tore it into small pieces. I don't want anything from you anymore, she said, looking straight at Richard. Richard tried one last move. Ashley, you're being influenced. Think about your future, the opportunities I can give you. The only opportunities you offer involve humiliation and abuse, she replied, her voice firmer now. You'll regret this. Without me, you'll get nowhere. I made it this far without you. I'll keep going without you. At that moment, 2 security guards finally appeared. But instead of removing Margaret, they approached Richard. Sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave, one of them said. What do you mean? I'm the one funding the scholarships at this university. And we appreciate your past contributions, said the university staff member who had stepped forward. But after what we've heard here, the university can no longer maintain an association with you. Richard was escorted out of the hall under the disapproving gazes of the guests. Before leaving, he tried one last time. "Ashley, you're making a mistake." She didn't even turn to look. When he left, the hall fell silent again. Margaret and Ashley stood alone on stage, mother and daughter facing each other after so much time apart. "Mom, I'm so sorry," Ashley said, her voice breaking. "You don't have to apologize. You were a victim of the same person I was. But I treated you so badly, said terrible things. You were hurt. You thought I'd failed you. You never failed. I just couldn't see everything you did for me." Ashley rushed into her mother's arms, and they embraced on stage, surrounded by emotional applause. It was a hug 25 years in the making, of reconciliation, forgiveness, and unconditional love. The university president stepped onto the stage with tears in her eyes. "This was the most important lesson we witnessed today," she said, taking the microphone. "True love doesn't seek its own benefit, but the good of the other." She turned to Margaret. "Mrs. Wilson, the university would like to invite you to retake the official graduation photo beside your daughter, the person who truly deserves to be in this special moment." Margaret was so overwhelmed she could barely speak. Thank you so much." The official photographer quickly rearranged everything. Margaret and Ashley posed together, arms wrapped around each other, both crying and smiling at the same time. It was the photo Margaret had dreamed of for years. After the photos, the two left the hall hand in hand. Outside the university, they sat on a bench to talk. "Mum, how did you endure all of this alone for so long? For you, it was always for you. I didn't deserve so much sacrifice." "Yes, you did. You're my daughter. No matter what happens, I'll always love you." Ashley rested her head on her mother's shoulder. "I was so lost. I thought you hadn't given me opportunities in life. I gave you what I could. It wasn't much in material terms, but it was everything I had. It was more than enough, I just couldn't see it." They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching other graduates leave with their families. "What will you do now?" Margaret asked. "Without his job, I'll find work on my own merit. The right way, like you taught me. I know you'll succeed. You're smart and determined. I got that from you." Margaret smiled. "Maybe, but you've always been special on your own." "Mom?" "Yes? Can I live with you again, until I get back on my feet?" Margaret's heart swelled with joy. "Of course you can. Our home has always been your home." "Our home? It's been so long since I thought of it that way." "That's what it's always been, and always will be." They stood up and began walking toward the bus stop. Ashley carried the folded graduation gown over her arm, and Margaret held tightly to the purse containing the phone with the recording that had changed everything. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How did you know you should record the conversation with him?" Margaret thought for a moment. "Experience. 25 years dealing with men who think they're superior to women taught me it's always good to have proof. You're smarter than I thought. I'm smarter than you thought, and stronger too. Why did you never tell me what he was really like?" "Because I didn't want you to grow up angry. I wanted you to be a better person than him. And you succeeded." When they reached the bus stop, Margaret looked back one last time. The university stood illuminated against the late afternoon sky, majestic and beautiful. "You know what makes me proudest?" she said. "What?" "Seeing that my daughter has integrity. When you discovered the truth, you did the right thing, even knowing you'd lose opportunities. I learned from the best." The bus arrived and they boarded together. During the entire ride back to Dearborn, they talked about future plans, dreams, and possibilities. Ashley shared that she had always wanted to work on social projects, especially helping women in difficult situations. Margaret suggested they might work together on it someday. "That would be amazing," Ashley said, "helping other single moms like you. Or daughters who were manipulated like you. The two of us together could make a difference." "We sure can. We've got plenty of experience." When they got home, it was almost midnight. The house was simple and small, but clean and tidy. Margaret had straightened everything up that morning before leaving for the graduation. "I missed this place," Ashley said, looking around. "Really? Really? I missed the smell of home, the furniture I've known my whole life, the feeling of being home. Margaret made tea for both of them, and they sat at the kitchen table just like when Ashley was little. "Mom, can you tell me what it was like when he left you?" Margaret hesitated. "Are you sure you want to know?" "I am. I need to understand the whole story. I was 7 months pregnant. He said he wasn't ready to be a father, that he had bigger goals in life." "And you?" "I was in love and naive. I thought he'd change his mind when you were born." "But he didn't." "No. He disappeared completely, moved cities, changed his number. It was like he never existed. And you were left alone with a baby." "I was. But I never regretted it for a second. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." Ashley held her mother's hand across the table. "It must have been so hard." "It was, but it was also rewarding. Watching you grow, learn, become an amazing person. It was worth every tear. And I wasted so much time being resentful." "It wasn't wasted, it was learning. Now you know who truly loves you." They talked late into the night, making up for years of distance. Ashley shared about her last months at university, the doubts she'd had about Richard but ignored, how she always felt indebted to him. Margaret told her how hard it was to see her drift away, the nights she cried with worry, how she almost didn't attend the graduation. "I'm glad you didn't give up," Ashley said. "Why?" "Because you were brave. You stepped onto that stage and faced him in front of everyone. You saved not just me, but all the other girls he could have harassed. I just did what any mother would do." "No, Mom, you did so much more. You were a hero." Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now continuing, in the days that followed, Margaret and Ashley's story spread across the university and local press. Several other young women approached the administration to formally report Richard. A week after graduation, Ashley received a call from the dean. "Ashley, we have a proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" "The university would like to create a support project for single mothers and students in vulnerable situations. Would you like to coordinate it?" Ashley looked at Margaret, who was preparing lunch in the kitchen. "Can I bring a partner?" "Of course. Who do you have in mind?" "My mom. She has 25 years of practical experience on the subject." Margaret dropped the spoon when she heard the proposal. "Me? But I don't even have a full college education." "You have something far more valuable," said Ashley. "You have life experience and wisdom." The university accepted the partnership, and a month later, Margaret and Ashley were working together on the Warrior Moms project. The program provided financial, psychological, and educational support for women raising children alone who wanted to study. In the first year, they helped over 50 families. Margaret led the support groups, where she shared her experience and listened to the stories of other women. Ashley handled the administrative side and fundraising. The project was such a success that other universities began implementing similar programs. At 57, Margaret discovered a new calling as a counselor and speaker. "I never imagined my story could help so many people," she told Ashley during a meeting. "Your story has always helped, at least one person, me. But now it's helping hundreds." That's the power of truth, Mom. When you shared your story on that stage, you weren't just saving me. You were showing everyone that it's possible to be strong, even when everything seems lost. A year after graduation, the university organized a special event to celebrate the success of the Warrior Moms project. Margaret was invited to give a talk on overcoming adversity. When she stepped onto the same stage where she had revealed the truth about Richard, she looked at the audience filled with women of all ages. "A year ago, I stood on this same stage, desperate to save my daughter," she began. "Today, I stand here to say that sometimes we need the courage to break the silence to protect those we love." The audience applauded emotionally as Margaret told her story. Ashley sat in the front row, proud of her mother. "I've learned that it doesn't matter how many times life knocks us down. What matters is that we get up stronger and use our experience to help others." After the talk, mother and daughter were embraced by dozens of women who identified with the story. One of them, a young woman around 20 years old holding a baby, approached in tears. "Thank you," she said. "My story is similar to yours. My baby's father left me when he found out I was pregnant. And how are you coping? Margaret asked. Much better after hearing your talk. Now I know I can give my son everything he needs, even on my own. Yes, you can. And you're not alone. We're all here. Margaret hugged the young woman and remembered herself 25 years earlier, lost and scared with a baby to raise. Ashley stepped forward and offered the young woman a spot in the Warrior Moms project. We'll help you study and raise your child with dignity, she said. As they were leaving, Margaret and Ashley walked across the university campus. It was late afternoon, and few students were around. Mum, can I tell you something? Of course. That day at graduation, when you stepped onto the stage, I was so angry at first. I know it was obvious. But when I heard the recording, when I understood who he really was, I felt something I'd never felt before. What? Pride. Proud to have a mother brave enough to protect me, even knowing I might hate her for it. Margaret stopped walking and looked at her daughter. You could never make me happier than you are right now. Why? Because you've become exactly the person I always dreamed you'd be. Strong, fair, compassionate. I learned from you. You were always this way. You just needed to discover it. They reached the gate of the university where it had all begun a year earlier. Margaret looked back and smiled. You know what's funny? What? If he hadn't shown up at your graduation, maybe we'd never have found our true calling. That's true. In a way, he did us a favor. Life has those ironies. It sure does, but now we know how to handle them. 2 years later, the Warrior Moms project had expanded to 5 universities in Michigan. Margaret had become a nationally recognized speaker, and Ashley was finishing her graduate degree in social work. One Tuesday morning, they were in the project's office when they received an unexpected call. Hello, Ashley answered. Is this Ashley Wilson Parker? Yes, it is. Who's calling? I'm from the National Education Foundation. We'd like to invite you to present the Warrior Moms project in Washington, D.C. We're considering implementing it nationwide. Ashley looked at Margaret with wide eyes. One moment, please. She covered the phone and whispered to her mother, They want to take our project across the United States. Margaret was stunned. What? They're calling us to Washington, D.C. to present the project. They want to implement it countrywide. I can't believe it. Ashley returned to the phone. We can go. When would it be? Next week. We'll cover travel and accommodations for both of you. After hanging up, mother and daughter hugged, overcome with emotion. Mom, remember when I said your story could help hundreds of people? I do. Now it's going to help thousands. Margaret began to cry. I never imagined I'd one day go to Washington, D.C. to present a social project. You deserve this and so much more. We deserve it. This is ours, both of ours. The following week, they were on a plane to Washington, D.C. It was Margaret's first time flying. I'm nervous, she confessed as the plane took off. Me too, but we're together. Always together now. The presentation in Washington, D.C. was a success. Margaret and Ashley explained the project to an audience of educational leaders from across the country. Margaret shared her personal story, and Ashley presented the statistical results. The project isn't just about financial support, Ashley explained. It's about restoring dignity and hope to women society sometimes forgets. And about showing that every warrior mom has a story of resilience that can inspire others, Margaret added. At the end of the presentation, the director of the foundation stood. We approve the nationwide implementation of the Warrior Moms project, he announced. And we'd like you both to oversee the expansion. The audience gave a standing ovation. Margaret and Ashley hugged, tears streaming down their faces. 3 years after graduation, Margaret was being interviewed for a national TV program about the project's success. Mrs. Wilson, what's the secret to overcoming adversity? The host asked. Love, Margaret replied without hesitation. Love moves mountains. When you truly love someone, you're capable of any sacrifice. And what advice would you give to mothers facing struggles like yours? Never give up. Believe in your own worth. And remember, today might be hard, but tomorrow could be the day that changes everything. Like that day at the graduation stage, Exactly. Sometimes we need the courage to face the truth, even when it hurts. When the interview ended, Margaret called Ashley. "Sweetheart, I just finished the TV interview." "I saw it, Mom. You looked beautiful and spoke so well. I keep thinking about how much our lives have changed. They changed because you had the courage to fight for the truth. We had the courage. This was always ours, both of ours." Today, 5 years after that day on stage, the Warrior Moms Project supports over 2,000 families across the United States. Margaret became a renowned speaker, and Ashley leads a team of 50 social workers. But what matters most to them is that they turned pain into purpose, turning suffering into hope for others. In their home in Dearborn, now renovated and expanded with the project's income, Margaret keeps a special framed photo of Ashley's official graduation. The two are hugging, crying, and smiling at the same time. "This photo says it all," she always tells visitors. "The moment we realize true love always wins in the end." And when someone asks if she regrets stepping onto that stage, Margaret always answers, "Never. It was the most important decision of my life." Because sometimes we need the courage to break the silence to protect those we love. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave a sincere comment below. Do you believe Margaret made the right choice by stepping onto that stage? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.